Happy New Year!
It's the new year. We're talking all about goal and intention setting. And this show was such a huge hit last year. We thought, heck yeah, we got to bring this episode back and put a spin on it for 2023.
Let's do this.
Let's do it.
You're listening to the Girl Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast, where we invite you to check your ego at the app, grab a cup of coffee, and get ready to dive into all things real estate marketing, social media, friendship, hardship, love, money mindset, and all the things that celebrate you as a badass boss babe.
We're here to encourage you, show up for you, give you a loving kick in the pants when you need it most, and be your soft place to land on the hardest of days. So pull up a seat at our table and get ready to be inspired and start living your best life by design.
Welcome to the Girl Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast. We are so excited you're here.
Okay, girls, let's dive in.
Okay, Beth, so here we are, 2023. Can you even believe it?
Nope. I sure as hell cannot believe it.
I feel like we said this last year maybe, but like
I know.
This year, it's kind of been a weird year. I'm not going to lie. It's like
what, 2022?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing like I thought it would.
Nope.
And it's just been kind of weird.
It was super weird. And I've said this now for, I don't know, over 2 years, and I feel like I'm a broken record, but COVID really screwed with the perception of time. My perception of time is so out of whack, where you're like, if you talk about 2019, when in all reality, calendar-wise, that wasn't that long ago, and you're like, holy shit, that was a lifetime ago.
That's when Kaya was born, the beginning of 2019.
It's just, but like, doesn't that feel like, in some regards, doesn't that feel like a lifetime ago? But then you look at her and you're like, oh, well, she is only 3.
Yeah. It really does.
Well,
now she's 4.
Turns 4 this week. Yeah.
So yeah, totally. But I agree with you, this time warp stuff. But we are in 2023. This is a reality. And we are going to share goal and intention setting today. And how, I guess we should start with maybe like how to get the motivation to do it, right?
Yep.
After the holidays, we are, I don't know, are you feeling like lit up to do this? Are you feeling sluggish? Did you eat too many cookies? I did.
Well, I mean, thankfully, I kept up with my gym routine during the holidays, which is probably the only thing that saved me. But yeah, like we ate too much, drank too much. In-laws have been in town for a month. Celebrated Mark's retirement and 50th birthday, plus Christmas.
Gosh, so much
stuff has happened over our holiday season. More so than we normally would have in a holiday season. So that's, there's that.
You're a little bit tired.
Yeah. Yeah,
good.
I could use like a beach and a lawn chair somewhere.
Oh, that would be so much. Did Birch just sneeze?
I know, Birchie just sneezed.
Did you hear that? Maybe everyone heard that. Birchie. Okay, Beth, so let's start with like, how do you not fall off the bandwagon right away in the new year?
I think one of the things is to not set yourself up for failure.
Yes.
I think so many people feel the pressure to put New Year's resolutions in place.
Oh my
gosh, and they feel like they're
yes.
failing like right out of the gate if they don't have them.
The shame spiral starts like January 5th.
And then people have this unrealistic list that they just kind of threw together without a lot of thought.
Been guilty.
Yep. And then you tuck it away and then you're like, you never look at it again.
Yeah.
And it's so how could you even set yourself up for success when maybe it wasn't even realistic things to begin with?
Yeah, I agree. It starts the shame spiral and then there you go.
And then you're like, fuck it, I may as well just like go off the rails.
Yeah, totally. So like, what do? You basically just like don't set yourself up for failure.
Well,
Is that what you're saying?
I certainly try not to. I think some of the things that have made me a little bit more successful here and there is doing like quarterly goals.
Okay.
And
does it make it feel more attainable?
Yeah, because then you're like, okay, this quarter I only have to focus on X, Y, and Z. It's not like this huge daunting list. It's things that are more manageable and more bite-sized. I try to be really realistic about it because I'm like, okay, if I'm 52 years old and I haven't been great at achieving goals so far, like what makes me think that this year is going to be any different?
Like specific goals, right?
Yeah,
like
or like really like lofty, crazy goals. It needs to be realistic.
I completely agree with you. And like giving yourself the time and space that even if this week is not when your goals are written down, like I think it doesn't have to be like a January 1 thing.
No.
We're talking about it.
That's the misconception is it has to be done. You have to have the shit
like
figured out before the bell rings.
It's a magical number, right?
Yeah.
It's not magical. I mean, New Year's is great and beautiful, the holidays, but like just maybe sitting down and asking yourself like questions now and like setting yourself up for goal setting whenever that happens over the next X amount of weeks.
Yeah. Well, I know you do it differently than I do, where you're really big on intentions and finding like your word for the year.
Yeah.
How do you see that playing out this year?
Oh, that's a great question. This year has been, I would say, the hardest year to goal and intention set in quite a while. This year's been a little bit different for me. So I do sit down and like wait until I'm in a good space to do it, and making sure that like starting with like, what did I feel? How did I feel best this year? Like, what did I do that made me feel the best? Like, show up the best? Like, what served my life, served my family, served me? And then like, what didn't work? What didn't work? What affected me? How did it affect me? And then what can I do differently this year to like remove those feelings? So it's a little bit more feeling and like intention based. I do set goals of like, there are some like more structured goals, but really honestly, it's like, how did I feel how did this make me feel? How did this year make me feel? And like, where can I grow and learn from there?
You're so good at that. I love that.
Yeah. And this year I'm giving myself more time. Usually I'll do this in like November. So like come Thanksgiving, I've got a really pretty good idea of where I'm going with this. And this is a really, I guess, good example of like giving yourself grace and a little more space with this. It just didn't feel aligned for me at all to do it in November. So I just kind of like let it go.
Yeah.
Like my word for this year was grounded. I felt grounded like 5% of this year. I'm gonna be super honest. So like to say this year was a little bit
No, it's good
funky.
that you're being transparent about that, because
Totally.
I think people think that you have to have it all figured out or you're an epic failure, and that's not the case.
No, I mean, absolutely not. So this year I'm doing a little bit differently. We'll see how that shakes out.
Yep.
And
Do you think you're going to do a word of the year this year?
100%. I already have some kind of on deck here.
Oh,
but
excited
grounded,
to hear more about that.
Grounded's for sure in there because I wanted it and craved it so badly last year that if I had to pick one, it would be that. But I do think a couple other ones are going to be coming in. So
cool.
Yeah, a little bit differently.
I love that.
I also make sure like I check in with myself and make sure I'm leaving like space for things to show up. So I think something else or a misconception or like the pressure we put on ourselves to goal set is that we have to like fill up the space. So like when you talk even about quarterly goal setting, right? Or, if you're doing monthly or whatever that looks like, or if you just do yearly, are you cramming so much into that time? There's no space for the universe to like throw you something amazing.
Right.
And so that's a huge part of it for me too. And I'm super good at like throwing as much stuff and checking as much stuff off as possible.
Yeah.
My desire to do is wired in me. It's in my human design. So really making sure that there's space and flexibility within that, which this year there was a lot less. So kind of getting back to that again this year. And I think that's super important too, regardless of how you goal or intention set.
Yeah. I think this is like with everything in life, even outside of setting goals, is that you see it with people with their kids, where their kids are so overbooked, like with soccer and dance and this and that. And you're like,
don't even get me started
the kids
on that.
don't even have a chance to be a kid.
We are actually now, sidebar, getting questions of why Kaya isn't doing XYZ. And we're just like, goodness gracious. Like
we're choosing not to.
Yeah, to give her space and like allow her to feel things and like seeing her shine in her best way and like allowing her to grow and all that. So I completely agree with that.
Yeah. So that, I mean, it's the same type of thing, is that if you jam everything in there, you're not leaving any space for any other goodness to show up.
And I totally think like when you're in alignment or if you're out of alignment, you're not performing as well. Like you might be able to get through it. Like a lot of this year, it was out of alignment. Like I just shared, I still got through it. I still like did what I needed to. Will this next year or is it already shifting? Absolutely. Like is change going to happen? Absolutely. And so like not getting caught up in like this pressure that I need to get this figured out right now, because the numbers aren't going to work themselves out if you're not in that right space. So really giving myself grace and like having like all of you asking yourself, are you giving yourself enough grace? Are you feeling grounded? Are you feeling aligned before you like set these lofty goals in life?
Yeah, I love that.
And, you know, we share a lot more about this in last year's episode 41, all about like intention setting and sort of how I get in alignment for that. So if you're listening to this show, that'd be a really cool one to check out too. If you're in goal setting mode and you really want to, you know, get in a good space for it, head back to episode 41 to listen to that. So, okay, Beth, why don't you share how you goal set a little bit more? I know last year you shared, and I'd love to know like where you were kind of at with that, if you're doing the same thing or if you're doing something a little bit different this year.
I might do things a little bit different this year. I've never done a word of the year, so that's sort of fascinating to me.
Ooh, do it.
And I feel like if I put that out in the universe, I feel like a word will show up. So part of me is like, yeah, I think I'm going to do that. I do love writing the letter to myself and writing it as if it's the end of the year. So writing the letter as if it's the end of 2023.
I love this idea so much.
And then all the things that I'm like really proud of.
Love it.
And so you're basically like, it's basically manifestation. Like you're manifesting what you want to happen.
Do you wait until the end of the year to read it? Totally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're not like peeking at it?
No, not usually. And I usually just put it in an envelope and seal it up and then look at it later. And then you're like, oh God, I totally forgot about that. And it's so interesting just to see what shows up. And it's sometimes things that you don't even suspect. You're like, oh wow, this didn't happen quite the way I like thought it would, but it did happen. And a lot of times the universe just brings it about in a different way.
Yes.
And that's super fun to see without me trying to manufacture or control the outcome on it. That's
I totally
really
agree. It's really cool. And the universe just like gives it to you just a little bit different.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
It's super exciting.
Yeah.
And then, you know, like I always say, I don't love surprises, but that is kind of a surprise.
You don't love
Yeah, I don't.
What did I say to Carrie? Oh gosh, this is so funny. Carrie on the team for your birthday. I was like, when we were setting up your and she's like, oh, what's up? I'm like, FYI, Beth does not like surprises. So like at least give her a heads up of kind of what she's doing, because it's going to be like in everyone's best interest. She was like, oh, okay.
It's funny that Amy and Carrie both said, they're like, oh, we heard you don't like surprises. And I'm like, I don't love like surprise birthday parties and that kind of stuff. It is not my jam.
Yeah, I figured like the anxiety of not knowing where you're going at all might be a little bit much. So
yeah,
I was like,
no, I appreciate you giving the girls a 4-1 on that. But I like to have my goals like really specific and tangible instead of being like sort of vague and obscure. And I totally love, I talked about this in the last episode, on episode 41, last time we talked about this, the insurance ad where the guy like finds a genie in the bottle when he's cleaning out his garage, and the genie pops out and says, you have one wish. And he's like, oh, you know, he's like, I'm trying to figure out what that wish is going to be. And he's like, I wish for $1 million. And then a million deer show up in his front yard.
Yeah.
And it's like, so Tom Ferry talks about this a lot too, that you're like, you have to ask for really specific
what you want
things, because maybe the universe can't like sift out exactly what you want if you're not asking for something specific. So I try to have my goals be really uber specific.
That's cool. Mm-hmm. Do you share them with anyone?
Sometimes. So I have shared goals with like Mark before, you know, and I think I'll share like team goal, you know, I've team goals with the team.
Yeah.
But
do you do like separate like business and personal?
Yeah, usually.
But will you do team in addition to your your business one?
Probably.
Yeah, that makes the most sense.
Yeah, just because there's so many moving parts.
Mm-hmm. And it's easier to be really specific within that then.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like you definitely like end result, like knowing what that is. And I like to like more focus on how this feels and like works in life.
So it's so funny like how different we approach it.
Yeah, I think that maybe though in the blend of both of those things is like the super like sweet spot, right?
Yeah.
If we like this year, I think I am going to make things a couple more tangible things.
Okay.
I think a little bit more so this year, but with the guide of my feel, how last year felt and like what I liked the most. So yeah. Maybe we can get you more in the feel.
Well, and you know, like when I looked at my goals for this last year, they were a shit show. I'm just going to be honest. Like, I feel like I didn't hardly achieve anything. But then I think about like how, you know, when you talk about like how I felt like hell, and not like I was sick or anything, but like my emotions and like my spirit felt really broken at the beginning of the year. And like, I felt like I kind of lost my mojo.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it took a while to get that back. And that really derailed a lot of my goals. I'm
totally
like, okay,
makes sense.
you know, and I'm like having a pep talk with myself every day. Like, Beth, like you have shit you got to get done. Like you had goals here. And I'm like, but I don't want to do it. And so that was sort of like that inner conflict. And it was for months. And I'm like, I had to like give myself some grace, like lick my wounds a little bit. And then I'm like, okay, and now the pity party, this shit is done. Get back to work.
You know, we did that check-in halfway through the year. I don't have the episode number handy, but our goal and intention setting check-in that we did in June. And we shared
That was kind of a hard episode for you and I to do.
It was a really hard episode. There were tears. We shared all this. And the second half of the year has shaken out quite a bit better.
Oh, completely. It's like night and day for me. Does it feel like that for you?
Yeah. And end of year was great. Like totally different.
Yeah.
So we had some really good changes happen and a lot of really good doors open, which was fantastic. But I think that has to do with more like even showing up at a different, like being more grounded and like, you know, letting stuff come in and letting go of what needed to be let go of. So that's interesting how like we did that check-in sort of at like the end, right? I think we both even talked about how we were feeling like, how did we word it? We were feeling like we were just kind of starting then.
Like felt like the year was just starting.
Yeah.
And we were 6 months into the year.
And I think that goes with like that January 1's not this magical number,
No.
you know? And so really giving yourself grace.
Yeah.
And to set this stuff is super important.
I feel like taking the pressure off. There's so much pressure
to
do it perfectly. And there's no one size fits all with setting goals and intentions. I mean, what works for you is going to be different for me, is going to be different for Amy and Carrie and Cheryl and like everyone on the team. It's no one person is going to do it exactly the same as the person next to them.
And, you know, there's like accountability that comes into play when it comes to, you know, growth and hitting your goals and that kind of thing too, and how that shows up. Like, is that one of the reasons why things are missed? And then again, that can start that shame spiral. And I think that that's also something important to like look back on your year and say, okay, like hold yourself accountable. Like, where did I show up? Like, again, whether it be asking yourself those more like feeling based questions, like where did I feel my best? When did I not feel my best? Or like, when did I do the work? When did I not do the work? Like, how did that affect me? How did that affect a team? If you're on a team or you're running a team, where did we miss the mark and why? Like actually looking into it. And this is hard to do. This is really hard to do. To go backwards, you want to like move forwards.
Yeah.
And the reality is we need to go back to like check that stuff out and see like, where did we miss the mark and why did that feel so icky? And like, how can it be done different in the future? Not beat yourself up, but how can we do
to
this
learn
differently?
from it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Totally.
Well, and so much of it is a mindset thing too.
Yes.
Is that, you know, there's mindset blocks at every turn. I feel like with every area of life,
Yes.
you're going to have some sort of mindset blocks. And like sometimes like if goals are so literal, it like can really like screw with your mind too. So you're just finding that happy balance of, okay, this is an attainable goal. This is achievable. Not getting in your own way. I mean, usually we're our own worst problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And like not just writing down goals that are someone else's.
Right. Like looking over someone's shoulder like, oh yeah, that's a good one. I'll put that on my list too.
You went on Instagram and saw a reel and someone said like, these are your 5 goals for the year. TikTok told you 10 goals.
Yeah.
Like, maybe not pulling them from there.
No.
But like really like looking inward of what worked and what didn't last year. And then kind of moving forward from there, I think is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah. No one can tell you. You have to kind of figure it out yourself.
Do you like, how do you have accountability around your goals, or do you like that, or do you want that, or?
Well, so this year's going to be a little bit different because I think I am going to set a couple tangible goals, but I'm going to leave them a little more open-ended, I think, if that makes any sense.
You're like, I'm not going to go too crazy with it.
No, I'm not going to go too crazy. I'll share them with you when I get them. But the feeling and like that, I definitely check in with myself, because it'll be like I was so out of alignment for so many years and just like working just ridiculous amount. Like, you know what that's like, Beth.
Yeah.
Like, you lived that life too for quite a while. And the reality, like, I'm able to like really know when I'm not like showing up as my best self. And with Kaya, it's even easier to know, because I'm like, I wouldn't have responded like that. You know, like, mommy's sorry. Like, that's, not, like when I say something to her, like maybe my tone changes and I didn't want it to, sort of thing. And so if I'm doing that, I know something's off, because like it's not something that typically happens. And so it'll show up in my personal life. And I love the episode we just, a few weeks ago had Allison Burns of Allie Marie Design back on the show, and she really dove into
such a good episode.
So good. If you haven't checked it out, go check it out. It's all about building an evergreen business while balancing motherhood. And she shares like how like she shared how like saving your worst energy for your family and how that doesn't work. Oh my God,
that like smacked me between the eyes, and I don't even have kids, and I was like, oh God.
Well, even for like Mark or like anyone, or for yourself, like, giving to your business, because it's like your baby. And then at the end of the day, you're like, or even if it's not the end of the day, say you've carved out 4 hours for your family, but you're your worst self. Like, that's not what you want to save for them. And so that really like hit home with me, and realizing like, sure, like the hours might be there for them, but like, am I showing up in the way that they need me? And then am I showing up for myself in the way that I need to? So
it feels really selfish to show up to like, oh, now's my family time and I'm just going to be a complete jerk.
And I think back to weddings, Beth, when I was like shooting 3 weddings a weekend, and then like I'd go to family dinner on a Sunday, like after the afternoon wedding.
Like I'm a zombie.
What the fuck? Like, honestly, I'm just like zombie. My body is just like screaming from pain, because I've literally been standing for like probably 30 hours over the weekend in shitty shoes. On
concrete floors.
And I'm just like, I'm so tired. Like, no shit, you're tired. Like, you're literally just there to eat and like sit. And like, I didn't obviously have Kaya then. And really Ryan and I met more towards the end of that phase of my life. But that was not showing up as my best self. So I know what that looks and feels like to like the extreme. And so I really, again, loved when Allison brought that up, because it made so much sense.
Yeah. I don't even know if I ever like even paid attention to that. And she said that, I'm like, oh wait, like that was the secret sauce of this episode.
Yeah.
Like, don't like leave like the shitty part of yourself and your emotions to your like, don't show up as that person for your family.
Right. Like, hey, let's go get coffee. And you show up and you're like,
you're like just a crabby son of a bitch. And you're like, oh, yeah, as if your family deserves that.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. That was good stuff.
We've had
but that is such a great thing that's a great thing to keep in mind for just every day.
It is. And like, I think that goes along with like setting yourself and your days up for success and accountability. And I am thankful that I think we are in a different place now as human beings. We have evolved past the hustle culture. I know that some of us are still stuck in it.
What? Me? Stop.
But honestly, like, still seeing that other things exist and are important, and still like holding yourself accountable in different ways to take care of yourself and show up differently. So that is something that's really cool.
So what about going forward? Like, or like, what are actionable items? Like, if someone's listening to this podcast and they're like, whew, thank God, it's not too late for me to like get my act together for my goals or intention setting for 2023.
So I really think our actionable items, again, from last year, episode 47, are still spot on. So let's share those, Beth, and then let's maybe share a couple more, because I think this year I've learned just a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah, those actionable items from last year I think were spot on, and I think they still really ring true today.
Totally. So like number 1 was go meditate, go for a walk, get out of your head, right? So like write down your perfect day and write until you can't write anymore. That was like the number 1. I still so strongly believe this is important and something that I still do. My coach will ask me to do this a couple times throughout the year. Maybe we need to revisit like your perfect day sort of thing. And so I think that's really, really helpful to write down your perfect day and just keep writing until you can't anymore, but getting into a good headspace before you do it. And then asking yourself, like, when's the last time did I feel my best in business, with my family, personal life? When did I not feel alignment?
They're good questions.
All those questions.
They're great questions. Number 2 is different, like write down different areas of your life where you want to see growth professionally and personally.
Yes.
Not just one or the other, but like both. They should work in unison.
They should. And when you are in alignment, they're going to make, you're going to be writing them down so they do, right? Because they do, everything meshes together. That's so, so important. And then the third one is write down goals and intentions for the year, personal, professional, and inner work, and accountability check-in with yourself. So like that's like a really big one. But setting goals like for yourself personally, professionally, and then like inner stuff that you want to do is also really important. We didn't touch too much on that in this episode, but really that like self look at yourself is the hardest thing you do. Like looking in the mirror is the hardest thing that we do. That inner work I think is like the hardest stuff that we do. So really writing down how you're going, like what are you going to do with that this year? And then accountability, like making sure that you're actually checking in with yourself on all professional, personal, and inner, on all of those levels throughout the year.
Mm-hmm. And then maybe like a number 4 to add to the list would be like to give yourself some grace and space.
Yes, totally.
Like grace if you F it up, because you're going to. Like none of us are perfect. So you have to have room for error built in there. Mm-hmm. And some space for extra good things to show up that maybe you've, like the last few years, you've been stressed and you've been filled up with whatever. If you've been in real estate, I know you probably have been like up to your eyeballs, like working your ass off.
Cramming too much in.
So like give yourself some space and see what else could show up for you. Maybe it's creative. Maybe it's an old hobby that you love.
Maybe it's sleep.
Maybe it's vacation and sleep. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things that maybe you haven't kept room for that would be a good thing to work into 2023.
So I'm going to add one more. I'm going to bounce back to Allison's episode just because I really think that's so powerful and it crosses over whether or not you're a parent. It really doesn't matter. Is like sitting down really and asking yourself, like write it down, like where's my energy going, right? And like if it's your family gets this, like I get this, like all this kind of stuff. And like figuring out like where you can carve out time where your energy is going and using it towards like the people you love and the things that bring things back to you.
Yep.
Right. So like putting that like big love out there to get it back. So saving that really good, big, juicy energy for the things that really give it right back to you. I think maybe would be like the last thing that we do.
That's perfect. It's a perfect way to wrap up actionable items.
So happy 2023. We are super pumped for this year. There's so much cool stuff happening, so much cool stuff on the podcast, so much cool stuff at the BPR experience. And we're here
and
for
we
it.
hope for you too.
Yes, we do.
Hope that like you have so many awesome things that you're looking forward to this year. And if you need us to be your cheerleaders, shoot us a message, and we would love to be accountability partners for you. So just let us know how we can help you achieve your goals.
Yes, happy goal setting, happy new year, and until next time,
keep your face off a bus bench
and keep being the badass boss babe that you are. And check out episode 41 where we dive into more goal stuff. Okay, girls, are you feeling as inspired as we are? We're over here cheering you on because you just finished another episode of the Girl, Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast.
If you want more, head over to girlgetyourfaceoffabusbench.com for show notes and more episodes. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. They mean the world to us, and they're what keep us going.
Girl, thanks for being here.